Not sure what carrier units you should be using in wars? Well, in this video, we're going to be going over the PvP tier list for carriers. Make sure to subscribe to our channel, join our Discord, and also follow us on Instagram so you always have the support that you need to really enhance your account and get yourself to the next level. Also, if you stick around until the end of the video, I'm going to show you how you can save a lot of money when you make in-game purchases by getting some amazing cashbacks each time you purchase anything. Hello everyone and welcome to another video of the Sky channel. In this video, we're going to be going over the PvP tier list for carriers, which is on our website because I got a lot of messages from people asking me when the carrier video is going to come out. I know the list is already on the website, but I'm glad to hear that a lot of people actually do care about the video explanation. And I certainly believe that it is quite helpful to get the context because you could see the ants but not understand why they're rated in a specific way or what the synergies are, and that's what the video is all about. But of course, as before, I do want to give a big shout out to the people who helped create the tier list. Diana, who's STG's R5, Blue Ant, who's Tor's R5, Sanraku, Zizu from Sky, and Springnuts from Sky. Together, along with myself, we went over 70 plus PvP lineups and rated them. And of those ratings, I picked a few of them to show on the PvP tier list on the website so that everyone knows what sort of units seem to be working better for wars. But now that we're already on our Discord, I want you all to know that Aptoide cashbacks can now be available for iPhone users. Check out this post I've made on our Discord which goes through the process with you. Essentially, this Aptoide all platforms ants link opens a version of the game on your browser and you can log into your iOS account and make purchases. And when you're making the purchases, use the Sky8 promo code and you get that 5% cashback bonus along with the other Aptoide bonuses that people get anyway. So you can start saving a lot of money. However, I would say that right now, you'd probably be using it just to make purchases. However, gameplay itself, you probably want to be using your normal app because, playing on a browser isn't that fun. However, you can still use the browser to make the purchases and save a lot of money and switch to the app when you want to actually play the game. So give that a try. I think it is quite beneficial and I think you can start saving a lot of money like all the Android users already are. And you can start joining the people that support the Sky channel and help us make our cool websites and all that stuff too. So thank you so much. Another thing is that I hope you guys are also following our Instagram. We have a bunch of cool stuff that we post there, like the new T11 ants and Blue Ant's new skin star, right? These sort of things that I think would make a better post as opposed to a video or something. I would just post it on the Skylands Instagram and you can just check it out there, so do follow us on Instagram as well. Going over to our websites, the PvP tier list, you all know the skylines.com, then click ants, then go to the PvP tier list. We're gonna jump to carriers and we're gonna go all the way down to the B tier and start from the bottom. So in all of the video, we're going to be going bottom up, okay? The first one is TA, Carpenter Ant, and CR. So TA is a frontline ant. It's a paid S4 ant. However, it seems that it's not the most popular, at least amongst the reviewers who rated some of the builds. It's primarily focusing on the dodge build, and that's probably why it's kind of pushed back a little lower because now the meta is moving towards negative effects as opposed to dodge. So you see, when there's a big meta shift, things that were part of the old meta do generally start getting pushed down because to have a good synergy with the current meta, certain ants are gonna work. Certain ants are pretty much part of a previous synergy, therefore their relevance continues to decline. So TA is part of the dodge meta. It gives dodge, it gives extra skill damage as well, and it also heals, which is actually quite helpful because the next two ants are also part of the dodge meta. Carpenter Ant. So Carpenter Ant increases its own dodge. It does extra damage if it actually successfully dodges the enemies, and it has the ability to silence enemies as well. And CR, which is in the back line of this squad, is pretty much the primary damage dealer. It does true damage to enemies through its skill number 2. It has the ability to reduce enemies' healing effects, which is helpful against guardians, and based on the amount of dodge that it has, it actually enhances its skill damage and control resistance, which is great as well. So the higher the dodge, the more the skill damage that CR can do, which is great because Carpenter Ant actually increases CR's dodge as well, and CR increases its own dodge as well. So there's two sources of extra dodge and extra skill damage. The next one, which is the second one on your screen right now, the only thing we changed here is that we swapped out TA with Agassi. Now Agassi is an S2 season ant. It's also part of the dodge build, by the way, and it is quite interesting because it increases the skill damage of all of your carrier squad significantly, and it has the ability of giving itself extra dodge that hopefully it lives longer in the front line. And I guess skill number 8 either reduces the preparation of your other carrier ant skill 5 by a round, or change the probability of releasing that skill to 100%. Depending on whether there's a round of preparation required or not. So it's a quite interesting ant. It's another one of the dodge builds, and it is fairly effective as well. The first one on your screen, it's basically TA again, the same. We talked about it before. CR, the same as we talked about before, but this time there's another S3 paid ant, and it is quite interesting. Again, it's heavily invested in the dodge build. So it has a chance of increasing its own dodge and the dodge of another ant in your squad, and every time a certain number of dodges accumulate, it does damage to the enemy, and it has its own damage dealing skill as well. So that is quite interesting, and it sort of works out because both TA and CR are giving themselves dodge as well. Now you have LP that is potentially increasing their dodge as well, and with every dodge it actually increases the attack and defense of that squad, and it's stackable a certain number of times, and after 5 dodges it releases some damage to the enemy. So the more your squad can dodge, the more damage LP can do. So that's our B tier, and essentially as you can see, the whole B tier is focusing on the dodge build, which was the previous meta for carriers. Now let's go to the first A tier, and you can see it's pretty much the squad we covered before, just that we replaced CR with LB. Now LB used to be called the King of Attack because when it came out, it was one of the most powerful damage dealers out there for carriers. It also has some dodge abilities in its skills, but its biggest thing is that it does a huge amount of damage to the enemies. It also has the ability of assigning certain debuffs to the enemies, which is interesting as well. Like for Guardians, it increases the damage taken, right? So if you're fighting a Guardian, LB can increase the amount of damage the Guardian squad takes. If the enemy is a shooter, it decreases their normal attack damage, and if the enemy is a carrier, it reduces their skill damage. So the debuffs that LB gives are interesting as well. Its Awakening makes it even better at doing more damage, and its 5th skill, which does a ton of damage, can actually release twice the first time it's released, which significantly increases the damage potential of LB. Most of its skills require rounds of preparation, and its Awakening also gives extra attack to all our squads when it releases a skill that required rounds of preparation, which is great as well. All in all, LB is a very powerful damage dealing ant, and therefore it can actually work pretty well. So the next A tier is moving towards a little bit of a mix actually. So we have Rainbow Wings, Mimic Crawler, and CR. Mimic Crawler is heavy on the negative effects meta, which is the current meta, and it is the meta basically. Rainbow Wings is a little bit on the dodge and a little bit on the negative effects, so it's kind of like a mix of both. While CR, of course, we know is part of the dodge meta. though it does have the ability of reducing healing of the enemies, which probably qualify as a negative effect, I guess. So let's go through each of the ants. So Rainbow Wings, what it does is that it increases on dodge. If it's getting attacked by somebody with a negative effect, it increases dodge even further and heals itself, making it better against enemies that have negative effects. It also deals damage and has the ability of increasing the trigger chances of all of your ant's skills by a certain percentage that is stackable, which is great because now you have a higher chance of releasing skills in your other ants as well, which is very helpful. And every time Rainbow Wings takes damage, it increases the health and defense of all of your squads, which is stackable up to 10 times, so it can add up to a lot of health and defense. And if it takes damage more than 5 times in a single round, it applies exhausted and bleeding on 2 enemy squads that lasts 2 rounds. That is a negative effect, right? So you see, it has dodge, it has negative effects, so it sort of works out towards both metas. The next one, Mimic Crawler, that is heavy on the negative effects meta. If you haven't heard about it, you're gonna hear about it now. It is actually really powerful. So what Mimic Crawler does really well is that it applies a ton of negative effects to the enemy squads, and it has the ability of assigning a lot of different negative effects. It also deals damage to the enemies and gives a buff to all of your squads, which allows them to deal even more damage to enemies with negative effects, which is possibly all your enemies because of the fact that Mimic Crawler is assigning negative effects. So is your Rainbow Wings, and hopefully maybe even the CR. And it's also providing healing and even more healing for every enemy that has negative effects, which is hopefully all your enemies. So overall, it's a pretty good support. And the primary thing is that it's assigning a lot of negative effects to the enemies and making your squads better at doing damage to enemies with negative effects, which is hopefully all of the enemies. CR is CR. We talked about it. It's a primary damage dealer. It has the ability of reducing healing for the enemy squad, which I'm assuming does qualify as a negative effect as well. That's why this sort of works well together. Moving up, the next A tier, we have Rainbow Wings. We just talked about it quite a lot. We have CR. We talked about that quite a lot as well. But now in the back row, you have Rainbow Scarlet, an S5 ant and a pretty nice one actually. And what Rainbow Scarlet does really well is that it's really good at dealing damage. It applies negative effects as well. It does extra damage to enemies with negative effects, and it has special abilities in its skill that allow you to do even more damage to certain enemies every round and reduce their healing effects, which is again great against Guardians. So overall, this is again another one of the mix. There's some dodge involvement in it as well and negative effects as well. And there are 2 pretty nice damage dealers, both CR and Rainbow Scarlet can do a bunch of damage. Moving to the next one. Here we have Rainbow Wings. We talked about that before. Mimic Crawler. We talked about that one before as well. And now we have Golden Crystal at the back. Now, Golden Crystal is a pretty nice ant. It does a bunch of damage and it has the ability of assigning poison to the enemy. It can also increase its own attack, and if the enemy is poisoned, it can give itself a skill damage buff as well, making it do even more damage. Now, the fact that poison is a negative status as well, that means Mimic Crawler's buff of doing more damage to enemies that have a negative status applies to Golden Crystal's poisoned enemies as well. So that's how you can see there's that synergy working out. There's the negative statuses coming from Rainbow Wings. There's the healing coming from there as well. Mimic Crawler giving its own healing as well and assigning a bunch of negative statuses, and then Golden Crystal also assigning negative statuses and doing a bunch of damage. Moving up one more. This one is going back to its dodge meta, right? So you have Rainbow Wings, which has the dodge abilities, and if the enemy has a negative status, it gets extra dodge. You have Carpenter Ant, which increases your squad's dodge. It does a bunch of damage, and the more you can dodge, the more damage its skills can do. And it can also silence enemies, which is a negative status. And then CR, we've been talking about it a bunch. It's primarily a damage dealer, but it does have the ability of getting enemies to have reduced healing effects. Moving up to the last tier, and this one is quite interesting because now we've jumbled up the ants a little bit. The first one is Golden Chaser, which is the rarer of the S5 season carrier ants. Then we have Gravedigger and then Golden Crystal. So let's talk about this one a little bit more. You see, Golden Chaser is a very interesting ant. It's skill number 2 based on whether the enemy is doing a damage skill or a healing skill. It either reduces the hit rate of the enemy by a certain percentage if the enemy is doing a damage skill, and if it's doing a healing skill, it actually does damage to the enemies, sort of, I guess, balancing out their healing. And this can trigger 3 times per round. The skill number 5 is actually quite interesting as well. It gets a huge amount of dodge and a huge amount of health. Now that dodge and health does reduce every single round, but after every successful dodge, it does have the ability of assigning poison or bleeding to the enemy, both of which are negative statuses. In this particular build, you probably wanted to be assigning poison, which you will understand once we go through the other ants. Skill number 8 is even more interesting. What it does is that it increases the negative status damage that all of your ants can do. It also reduces the amount of damage that enemies that have negative status can do to your squad. So both things. You do more negative status damage to the enemies, and if there's a negative status enemy that's trying to attack you, you take less damage from them. The next ant is Gravedigger, and it's pretty interesting because number 1, it can increase the skill damage of all of your squads by a pretty high percent, 45%. With the Awakening, this effect remains throughout the entire battle. So you're talking about a 45% increase in skill damage for all of your carrier ant squads. You can also assign poison, which does a bunch of damage to the enemies, and if it's attacking an enemy which is already poisoned using its skill 5, it does damage and can silence the enemies as well, giving another negative status to an ant that already has a negative status. So assigning negative statuses, assigning poison, which is going to be key here, and giving extra skill damage to all of your squads, including Golden Crystal, which is going to be the primary damage dealer for your squad. And then Gravedigger's Awakening also allows it to do even more poison damage to the enemies. Not to mention, this is going to get enhanced further because of Golden Chase's ability of dealing more negative status damage. Then you have Golden Crystal, which benefits greatly from enemies that have poison because it can then increase the skill damage and do even more damage to the enemies. Golden Crystal doing a bunch of damage, doing poison damage as well, which is again enhanced because of Golden Chaser. And the fact that all 3 of these ants are able to assign poison means that Golden Crystal might end up increasing its skill damage quite often. So overall, a fairly good unit, but it is still an A tier. Now let's go over to the first S tier. So this one, we have covered something very similar before. We talked about Rainbow Wings and Mimic Crawler, both having the abilities of healing, abilities of assigning negative effects, and then you have Rainbow Scarlet at the back. Now Rainbow Scarlet really benefits when it's fighting enemies with negative statuses because it can do more damage. It has a lot of damage dealing potential anyway, and it has extra abilities of dealing extra damage through its skills. Now the fact that Mimic Crawler is really good at assigning negative effects means that Rainbow Scarlet can really benefit from that as well. So a lot of these ants were covered previously. Now this one is arguably quite better because now instead of Rainbow Scarlet, we are using one of the strongest carrier ants that's out there, and that is Honeypot Ant. You see, Honeypot Ant deals a ton of damage to a point where it makes that King of Attack look bad. But it does a lot of damage, not just through skills, but through poison. You see, Honeypot Ant is like Golden Crystal, but hugely buffed Golden Crystal. So it does a lot of poison damage. It does a lot of damage itself. It has the ability of increasing its own poison damage through the Awakening. And the more negative effects the enemies have, the more damage Honeypot Ant can do. It can also spread the poison to other squads that don't have poison if it targets an enemy squad that is already poisoned. It can increase its control effects, and it can reduce enemy healing. There's just so many things about Honeypot Ant that it's probably easier to talk about what it can't do. But overall, if you want to think about it like a very, very, very powerful golden crystal, and think of it like one of the strongest damage dealers out there that benefits from negative effects and poison. Negative effects can be assigned by both Rainbow Wings and primarily Mimic Crawler. which can also assign poison, by the way. So you can see the synergy over there. Now you can see we talked about a similar build in the A tier, Rainbow Wings, Mimic Crawler, Golden Crystal. This one is S because we replaced the Golden Crystal with the super buffed version of Golden Crystal called Honeypot Ant. Moving to the next S tier. And essentially what we did here is we replaced Mimic Crawler with Gravedigger. And essentially to help you understand what difference that makes, Gravedigger is primarily focused on poison. It can assign poison and can increase the skill damage of all of your squads, which is great. For Honeypot Ant, which also focuses on poison, it gets extra damage when fighting enemies with negative statuses, which includes poison. It's getting the extra skill damage buff of the Gravedigger, and if it's attacking somebody that already has poison, it can spread poison to the other squads, which is helpful as well. So overall, there's some similarities between Mimic Crawler and Gravedigger in this particular build, primarily because of the fact that Gravedigger can work well with Honeypot Ant, and that's why it's in the same category, which is S tier. Now the next S tier is pretty interesting. We have Golden Chaser, Mimic Crawler, and Golden Crystal. So you can probably already see some of the links there. Mimic Crawler, we talked about it. It assigns negative effects and increases the damage that your squads can do to enemies with negative effects. Golden Chaser, increasing your survivability against enemies with negative effects and increasing the negative effect damage you can do, which Mimic Crawler is going to benefit from, and so will Golden Crystal. Golden Crystal being the poison focused damage dealer, which can benefit from the fact that Golden Chaser can also assign poison, and hence Golden Crystal has a higher chance of getting that skill damage increase and do more damage. And then it's already benefiting from the fact that Mimic Crawler gives extra damage to enemies that already have negative effects. And there's just so many ways to get negative effects through this build. Moving to the next S tier, and what we have here is now we have the dodge meta, but instead of the typical answer we had before, we put Golden Chaser in the first row because Golden Chaser also gets a massive dodge buff in the first round. It's about 60% dodge and health in the first round, and it decreases 10% every round, but that's a lot of dodge, right? And then Carpenter Ant can increase that dodge further, and the more dodges that happen, the more damage it can do, and then CR being the primary damage dealer, which can benefit from the survivability that Golden Chaser is providing as well. Not to mention Golden Chaser's own ability of doing damage to the enemies anytime they try to heal, or reducing their hit rate anytime they try to do damage to you. The last one of the S tier, we basically swapped out Rainbow Wings with Golden Chaser, and then we have Gravedigger and Honeypot Ant. In my opinion, this is even better than the Rainbow Wings one because Golden Chaser does provide poison as well. It increases negative status damage, which is huge because Honeypot Ant gets a ton of negative status damage. You have Gravedigger there giving extra skill damage anyway, and poisons, and then you have Golden Chaser's poisons and Honeypot Ant's poisons, a lot of poisons going around, and each of them benefit from that poison damage as well. That's the last of the S tier. Now we're going to go to the first S plus tier, and what you have here is again Golden Chaser and Honeypot Ant. We know about their synergy and the fact that they can actually provide a bunch of negative statuses. Then we have Rainbow Scarlet in the middle, which is another high damage dealer, which benefits from negative statuses and does a ton of damage by itself. So there, the survivability is coming from Golden Chaser, and then the damage is coming from Honeypot Ant and Rainbow Scarlet. That's what makes it an S plus tier. Now we are moving over to the free-to-play meta. You have Golden Chaser, Mimic Crawler, Rainbow Scarlet. Golden Chaser able to provide negative effects to the enemies, also increasing the amount of negative status damage you can do to the enemies, reducing the damage enemies can do to you if they have a negative status, which they probably will. Mimic Crawler assigning negative statuses and increasing the damage that all of your squads can do to enemies with negative statuses, and also providing healing and some damage potential, and Rainbow Scarlet being the main primary damage dealer of your squad and also able to provide negative statuses and able to benefit from certain damage buffs. This is your free-to-play meta, and it is very, very effective, especially if you have the new insect. Now remember, Rainbow Scarlet can also reduce enemy healing. Now you may have noticed that a lot of these carrier ants have the ability of reducing healing, and that's primarily to target guardians. You see, carriers are great against guardians. That's how it's being designed and that's how it is happening. But now let's talk about the last S plus tier, because I think that's also relevant to the guardian discussion. This is your pay to win meta, and it eats guardians alive. It does so much damage to guardians that even if you have a fair drop in stats compared to your enemy, if they're a guardian, they will struggle against this squad. Golden Chaser, Mimic Crawler, Honey Pot Ant. We've covered all of these ants before, so you probably already understand the synergies. You can get poison from Golden Chaser, poison from Mimic Crawler, poison from Honey Pot Ant. All three of them have the abilities of providing negative statuses, and all three of them are going to benefit from enemies having negative statuses. Golden Chaser by reducing the amount of damage that all your squad is going to take. Mimic Crawler increasing the amount of damage your squad can do to enemies with negative statuses, and Honey Pot Ant also doing more damage to enemies with negative statuses and doing a ton of poison damage to the enemies, particularly buffed by Golden Chaser's increase in negative status damage. So overall, a very, very powerful unit and really destructive for carriers. Well, I hope this video was helpful for you. Let me know if you've tried out certain other builds that you think should be added to the tier list so that I can update the tier list, as I love to update the tier list often and keep it up to date with a lot of different builds that people can use. And before you go, I want you to know you can save a lot of money in the Ants Underground Kingdom using Aptoide with my promo code. Check out the video that's linked to the description of the video, or click the how to use button on the website. That'll take you to the video, or the button that's going to appear at the top of the screen, that'll take you to that video as well, which will go through the whole process with you. And remember, now it's not only limited to Android users, even iOS users can start benefiting from the huge amount of bonuses and cashbacks you can get using Aptoide with my promo code. Join hundreds of other people benefiting from this and saving a lot of money, and join the group of people supporting the Sky channel and the website. Thank you so much for all your support. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.